We should actually join the Belt and Road. You heard it here first, but let me explain what I mean, which is that the Belt and Road, again, is China, and then 30, 40, 50, whatever growing number of far weaker countries. But in the Belt and Road Charter, it actually says we respect the principles of free enterprise, the private sector must lead, and so forth. But is that actually going to happen when China and a whole bunch of, I don't want to be crude, but sort of less than well-governed states gather together in Beijing for a big kumbaya? Not really going to happen. The only way you're actually going to make sure that the standards are high and so forth, and that the loans are not at non-concessional rates, is if America is there, Canada is there, Germany is there, Britain is there, and then we say, hey, wait a minute, why did, whether fill in the blank, Angola or Mozambique or Oman or whomever, just forced into these terms that don't make sense for them. But instead, if you're there, if you're a signatory to this, you can say, hey, wait a minute. No, I mean, one thing's for sure, if you know anything about Germany and German businesses and a company like Siemens, they're not going to allow a Chinese contractor to get the sort of inside track on something when they can compete and they're better, right? So we need to be inside the tent. And this is not a radical theory. It's not a hypothetical. This is exactly how diplomacy operates. We created Bretton Woods institutions, and now as rising powers have come in, they challenge our views, right? They dilute us from within, right? They speak against us. China has experienced this itself already with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, which was sometimes described as the NATO of the East. But India has been lobbying to join the group. And now that Russia acquiesced and supported India joining the group, now it's a group that China founded, and China can't always get what it wants. So how do you make sure that in a club like the Belt and Road is, very loosely defined with no real normative, sort of superstructure, how do you make sure that it doesn't just get what it wants? You actually join it.
So let me be the sort of, I'll admit, sort of unreconstructed American here, okay, reacting to that. The way you describe One Belt, One Road, it sort of sounds like the Marshall Plan. And I never in the past confused One Belt, One Road with the Marshall Plan. No. The Marshall Plan seemed to be very different, very differently motivated than that. My impression was, it's the rule I learned back in college was Tanstaffel, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Mm-hmm. That basically China is doing this for good and sufficient reason for their own best interests. Yeah. But for us to go in and play into that, don't we play into that quite directly?
No, we're actually doing, this is what I described as the roadmap, the tactical roadmap to getting to exactly what Mike said, which is how do we help these countries actually pick the best projects that are going to actually help them grow so that they become, because we're not going to compete with China on building bridges and roads and deploying even the volume of loans that they are. But we want these economies to grow because they're going to be our next set of export markets, right, in Asia. And the richer they get, the more they're going to want to, I hate to use the phrase buy American, but you know what I mean. And otherwise, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because this is what we fear. Why else would we be so, cynical about China if we didn't fear their intentions, which is exactly the nature of your question. If you're actually asking, what are you going to do about it, you cannot but come to the conclusion that I've come to, which is that you have to get inside the tent and compete.